do not try to save money and by spending your time like I did driving for dollars. You need to invest into your business to save time.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this show and get some great value for your investing needs, make sure you tell us about it, right? Leave us some honest feedback with the rating and review. It helps us, but it also helps other listeners find the show for their investing goals. And if you haven't done so, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, we got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Anton Z. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Anton Z is a visionary entrepreneur and real estate enthusiast, recognized for his exceptional ability to identify opportunities and transform them into successful ventures. Now, he is the CEO of REI Call Center. Anton has displayed remarkable leadership, guiding the company to tremendous growth and scaling it into a highly profitable 6-figure business in less than 1 year. Let's welcome to the show, Anton Z.
John, thank you so much for having me. Super excited.
Absolutely. Anton, great to have you on the show. I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
By the way, that was one of the best introductions that I've had. So thank you so much for giving that. But long story short, I have been in real estate for the last 6 years. Before that, I was in a W-2, working my W-2 world and investing in real estate on the side, and then decided to go all in on myself on the business of REI Call Center, the company that I started 3.5 years ago. Since then, we've helped hundreds of investors to find off-market opportunities, including commercial and apartment buildings, by going directly to seller.
I love it. So 6 years ago, you got into real estate. 3.5 years ago, you launched REI Call Center and went full time into this business. What is REI Call Center? What is it? What exactly do you do? And what kind of prompted you to say, hey, there's a need for this?
Love that question. So when I started in real estate, I knew I wanted to find deals at a deep discounts. And of course, whenever you're trying to find those type of deals, there's a few alternatives that you can use, and that is driving for dollars, where you actually get into your car, drive around the neighborhood, which I've done in the beginning, and look for properties that need a lot of work and try to knock on their doors and see if anybody's there. Usually those properties are abandoned, they're vacant, so it takes a while for you to find the owner. But this is how I started learning the whole process of how do I get directly to the property owner. I started with driving for dollars. I'd get to the property, see it vacant, see the grass being all high and the property not being taken care of, obviously. And I got into the world of skip tracing. So for skip tracing, so in order for you to get a name and phone number and email of the property owner, you have to skip trace that property owner. So I would use different types of property skip tracing services out there, like Genie Skip or PropStream, even if your listeners are familiar with that system. But I would get their phone numbers and I would just literally start dialing them. Hey, John, my name is Anton. I was driving by your neighborhood. Here, saw your property, and go from there. That is how I landed my first few deals that I wholesaled, and then I started buying. Today, I have a little bit under 14 units. Actually, I do have 14 units in the Miami area over the last 6 years that I have been able to purchase, buy, and hold, and we can definitely talk about that as well. But I realized how going direct to seller is how you get to these deeply discounted properties. So I started calling myself. I started pulling lists. I learned about pulling motivated sellers lists using PropStream. That's back when I used to listen a lot to Bigger Pockets, YouTube videos. I learned a lot in terms of pulling motivated sellers lists. And then I started to come home and calling these property owners myself. I literally, John, would pick up the phone and just start dialing and say, hey, John, this is Anton. I was wondering if you might be interested in selling your property on 123 Main Street. Long story short, that has been super successful for me when I started doing real estate. And then I decided to just start. A lot of people started asking me questions, to be honest with you, about what it is that I'm doing. And since I am very active on Instagram, if you guys follow me, Anton Zherelyev. By the way, to your listeners, if you guys would like to get a free market analysis for your market, because I know it's super important for you guys to understand your market before you invest in it, before you start looking for deals, that's something that we provide to our clients. But to your listeners, I can give it to them free of charge. Just go ahead and just DM me, John Kosman, and I'll connect with you and have our data team pull your market analysis. But going back to what I was doing, I was dialing these property owners, and one day I realized there's got to be a better way to do this. So I started looking for help. I started delegating. I'm a huge believer in delegating. So I started looking for people that can do the calling for me, that I would hire, train, and then manage, and hopefully they can go ahead and source me some deals. I started doing that. I became successful in that. Literally, just like any entrepreneur who's listening to this and can definitely relate, you figure it out as you go, right? Nothing really, you don't wake up and say, hey, I want to go ahead and start a call center. Hey, I want to start cold calling. You don't. You figure it out just by taking the first couple of steps. And those first steps was driving for dollars, doing my cold calling myself, learning about skip tracing, hiring out help, and then getting those deals coming into the pipeline. And primarily, I was focused on wholesaling back then before I acquired my first couple properties. My big claim to fame is on one of my first deals that I got through cold calling. I made $100,000 on that one deal within the assignment fee, which was incredible to me. That's when the whole light bulb moment hit me in terms of how this world of real estate can really literally change your life overnight. And I started talking about that on my Instagram. People started reaching out. Anton, can you help me find a cold caller? Can you help me find a cold caller? And in the beginning, I wasn't even charging people. I was like, yeah, man, sure. Let's go ahead and give back, because I'm a big believer in karma. I think the more you give to the world, the more you get back. And I started helping people find their own cold callers. After doing that for a couple of months, I decided, let me go ahead and, my time is valuable, John. Let me charge these guys $1,000. I would, if you would have called me back then about 4 years ago, and you would have said, Anton, can you help me find a cold caller? I would have told you, sure, man, just go ahead and pay me $1,000 once the cold caller is hired, so that, for my time and energy and all that good stuff. So, and then this kind of just started growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And back then I was part of a mentorship program, and my mentor called me. My mentor called me himself, and he's like, man, what is it you're doing here? And I'm like, I'm just helping people find callers so they can find off market deals. And he's like, okay, can you help me find a call? Can you help me find a caller? And I don't know, John, if you're part of any sort of mentorship programs or not, but that was a huge, big realization for me. If I can help my mentor do this, this is amazing. So I did. I helped him find his first couple of cold callers. Long story short, they didn't work out because you have to manage these guys, right? These are people. These are not machines. And even though we're going into the world of AI right now, people are still people, and people still will be needed out there, no matter how much AI can change the world. People will still be there and working along with the AI side of things. So in REI Call Center, we don't use any AI. We still kept with the people side of things, just because we understand how important it is to have a conversation, especially with what your listeners will resonate with. And we can definitely jump into this right now if you like. But commercial property owners are completely different type of conversation that you would have than, for example, that you would have with a single family property owner that needs some help.
Yeah, man. Let me play back a couple of things you said, because one, I think it's important to understand. One thing you said was, hey, you will look for properties at a deep discount. And at a deep discount, that typically means properties that are not going to be listed on the MLS, right? There's a bigger problem to be solved. And because of that, you're going directly to the owner. So you were driving for dollars. You mentioned skip tracing, which is the process of figuring out the contact information for that owner, right? So you get the property address, but then the process of figuring out, well, who owns it? What's their phone number, email address? Like, that's skip tracing. So you went through that process. You would gather this information and make calls at night to these owners, and you ultimately ended up doing some deals. One where you made $100,000, which is amazing. But then you started helping other people. People started asking you, hey, can you help me find a cold caller? So you did. You would go out there, you'd help them find a cold caller. Eventually started charging people for that. And then ultimately you realize that, hey, there's a process. even if you have a great cold caller, you have to manage them. And if you're not doing that accurately, there's going to be a flaw in the system. It sounds like that's what ultimately led you down the path of launching REI Call Center. And then we'll definitely talk a little bit more about how to leverage this for commercial. What I want to know is like, I think many people who have looked at getting cold callers, because I mean, let's just back it up. Who doesn't want a property at a deep discount? Like that seems great for everyone, right? Like, yeah, you're telling me I can get this for 50 cents on the dollar? Of course. Who doesn't want that? Most people are not willing to invest the time and energy to, you know, go drive for dollars, make a list, cold call, go through all the no's and all the effort it takes to actually track those deals down. So what are some of the obstacles you see? And obviously cold calling is a solution, but talk to us more about kind of how that actually works when you kind of use a third party individual to cold call for properties on your behalf.
Absolutely. I love that question. Thank you for leading into that. One of the best things that I've read this week, I'm reading the book about Naval Ravikant. Phenomenal book that I highly recommend. But one of the things that really resonated with me, what he said in that book, was that most people try to save money
Mm,
by spending time. What you should be doing as a business owner, entrepreneur, if you want to grow, you should be spending money to try to uh, save money to save time. Spend money to save time. Sorry, let me go ahead and track back. So do not try to save money and by spending your time like I did driving for dollars. You need to invest into your business to save time. And what I mean by that is that, yes, you can definitely hire a cold caller. You can definitely hire uh, anybody in your business, but it's one thing hiring them. It's another thing making sure that they perform, they get managed, they get the right resources for them to succeed. It's not only about putting a cold caller on the list and say, hey, go ahead and succeed. It's about pulling the right data. It's about targeting the right market. It's about uh, calling motivated sellers that are going through some sort of a distress. We're talking about a deep discount. Why would anybody want to sell you their property at a discount, John? It has to be something either wrong with a property that, just like you said, it would not be able to be sold on an open market because the bank would not finance it. So you would have to pay cash, right? And we can definitely talk about different types of strategies there. Or they're going through some sort of a family or life distress, divorce, tax liens, foreclosures, bankruptcies, etc. So those are the type of people that you want to target. So I realized early on in the game is that your inputs are gonna play a huge role on your outputs. And it's again not about the type of cold caller that you hire them. It's about training them daily. It's about having coaching sessions. It's about pulling them off the dialer if they're not performing, giving them some sort of motivational boost, putting them back on the dialer. So it was a huge ecosystem that I was able to again build with our REI Call Center. We have over 300 people right now working for us because how important it is for us to succeed for our clients, because we know we would not be in business if we do not succeed. So, and the way we do that is by pulling the right data. We actually invested and bought a skip tracing company just because we've been doing so much business with them over the last 3.5 years that we actually bought them and said, you know, guys, we want to go ahead and give you an offer, and we actually bought them and brought them on to our side. But we have the data team in place that does market analysis first, which I told your listeners you can come get me. If you'd like to get it for free, please go ahead and let me know. Then we skip trace using the right skip tracing company, making sure we get the right phone numbers. Then we upload it into the right dialer. We use a power dialer to make sure that we get as many connects as we possibly can. Make sure our phone numbers never get put into spam by changing those phone numbers every week. There's so many moving pieces in this whole world of going off market by hiring a cold caller. That is what I think made REI Call Center successful, is because we put it all into a nice box and said, look, we have the right people and training and processes in place. We have the right systems like the dialers and the CRMs in place to help you grow. And then the most important part, we figured out that the data side of things is super important. We want to pull the right data. And especially when we're talking about commercial side of things, but the right data, because it's going to play such a huge input on the performance of the caller and the performance
yeah.
of your campaign.
Anton,
So
I want to definitely jump into the data because I think that's so critical, especially when we talk about that motivated seller. What I want to illustrate, though, or want you to illustrate, is you mentioned you got callers for your mentor. the fact that this person was your mentor tells me they knew a thing or two about multi or real estate investing. But you mentioned that their cold callers didn't work out. So where do you think that gap is, right? And I know company wise, you talked about the data and things like that, but what I want to get at is, I think many people may go out there and okay, I'm going to hire a VA to cold call on my behalf, right? Or going to hire somebody, and a lot of times it doesn't work out. And I think that is the step that is so challenging for many people. So I want to identify why it doesn't work out, and then understand again how REI is centered to provide a better solution there.
Love it. Yep. Great question. By the way, that mentor that used to mentor me on real estate, he became a partner in the business. So, because eventually, just like you said, and I did speed through that in the beginning of the conversation, how those two callers that I hired for him did not work out. And the reason why they did not work out is because, again, you have to manage the people. You have to treat them as people will be treated. They're not machines. And they come in here and they make 1,500 calls per day for our client on a power dialer. 99% of those calls are, please don't call me again. Well, not 99, but we'll say 90% of those calls, don't call me again. I'm not interested. La, 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 you're the 10th person who called me. So they get a lot of negativity coming to their side every single day. So it's super important for us to listen to this, to the flow of their conversations, which our power dialer does allow us to do. So the reason why it didn't work out is because you have to manage them. You have to make sure they come on time. You have to make sure they're motivated. You have to make sure they perform. You have to make sure that they're trained. You have to pull the right data, enough of the right data for them to be able to call 1,500 people per day, so that they can always have fresh data coming in. So there are so many moving pieces in that whole in the whole process that I didn't even realize that on a scale like somebody like my mentor, who's doing much more deals than I did back then, would face. And then he actually came up to me after those two cold callers did not work out. He's like, "Listen, man, I think we have an interesting challenge puzzle here that we can put together and fix and offer it to the community." And that's what we did. Is we said, why don't we go ahead and hire, train, manage, provide the right systems, provide the right data to the cold calling side of things, so that your cold callers can actually succeed. So
Anton,
you
sorry, I wanted to jump in. Just I think that's a point I want to make sure we submit, right? So just like any business, it is not enough to just hire someone and wait for them to perform and be magical, right? You've got to manage these individuals. You have to give them feedback. You have to keep them inspired. You have to make sure you're giving them the right resources to be successful. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we forget that. As business owners, we forget that. We want to hire somebody, and typically we hire someone because there's a pain point we feel, and we want someone to take it off of our plate, right? Whether it be social media, whether it be cold calling, whatever it is, it's like, all right, I'm gonna hire this person and they're gonna fix that and I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's simply not true. You're still going to have to be in that CEO or that manager role where you're helping to train, to manage, to oversee, to reinforce, to help this individual be successful. And I think so often we forget that because we're so desperate to just kind of get something off of our plate and hand it to somebody else, that we miss that we now need to manage that individual and check in with them and support them and get feedback. So I appreciate you taking a moment to share that, because I know I've talked to many, many people who have hired VAs or hired cold callers. And, after 2 months, like, oh, we didn't get any leads, or it didn't work, or we didn't get any deals out of this. It's not working. And it's not necessarily that it didn't work. I mean, obviously the result wasn't there, but maybe your process wasn't there. Maybe you didn't manage them. Maybe you didn't take the feedback as far as what you were doing. So I appreciate you sharing that. Talk a little bit more about the motivated sellers and the data, because you talked about that and hinted at it a few different times. And I know one of the big challenges, particularly for those who are in commercial real estate, is the appearance or the perception is that it's really hard to find motivated sellers in commercial versus, you go into single family, you can find, lists where someone maybe has inherited a home, or there's a tax lien or something else. And maybe that's just not as prevalent in commercial real estate. Can you just elaborate on like how you approach motivated sellers and making sure you're pulling the right data?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And by the way, just a quick step back. One of the greatest books I think on entrepreneurship and business out there is the E Myth. and I'm sure you probably read this, I'm sure your listeners did, and it's a great reread. And the E-Myth talks about how most entrepreneurs go through this cycle of starting a business, hiring a team, the team's not working out, they're blaming the team, they're doing everything else on their own, and then they go back and becomes a circle where they actually just want to get away from their business and just say, you know what, I'm done, because there's so much more stress. And in that book, one of the biggest takeaways is that he talks about the importance of having the right systems in place for your team to succeed, the right processes, the manuals, the SOPs for the team to succeed. And if you don't have that, you cannot, even if you brought somebody who is just the most genius person out there, without having the right processes in place for them to succeed and the systems and the resources, they're going to fail. And you're going to blame them and you're going to start doing their job again. So it's super important. That's probably one of the reasons why, again, going back to why REI Call Center succeeds, is because the systems, the processes, the data, everything is there. And we're always trying to improve in terms of figuring out what works, what doesn't. Dialers, CRMs, different types of training programs, coming on these types of podcasts and talking about it. So if you're just like you said, I love that comment about how stop blaming the outside and start looking on what is going on in the business that you're not doing as a business owner to provide the right resources and manuals for these guys to really succeed. And that's why I think we have grown the way that we have. And now your question about motivated sellers. It's very important. And it's one of those things. I love Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn is I listen to him always. And I don't know if you remember that, the story that he loves to talk about the salesman and when it's pouring outside. Just like really quick about how, hey, it's raining outside. I'm not going to go ahead and sell today just because I'm going to get all wet. And, people are, and then there's another salesman who wakes up in the same rainstorm, but in his mind, he's like, man, thank God it's raining outside, because I'm going to go out there and make all the sales, because all the other guys are not going to be doing it. That's the same thing with commercial real estate and finding motivated sellers. A lot of people don't think that you can find you can pull motivated sellers lists. You can find motivated sellers that have been owning these properties for 20 plus years, retired landlords that just want to get out of it. And there's different types of motivations. We talk about 23 different types of motivations. There are different types of list providers that we use and put them all together. We don't just say, hey, we're going to go ahead and only use PropStream. We're only going to go ahead and use Batch Leads. We're only going to go ahead and use PropWire or any other resource. It's super important to look at all the resources that you have, go in there and try to stack those motivations. And after that, run the list for duplicates and send them through. A lot of these property owners are owned, I'm sure you know, are in an LLC, right? And that has been another showstopper. How like, oh man, I can't call these property owners because they're named in an LLC, and I won't be able to get to the right LLC owner. So we fixed that problem. We went to our skip tracing company that we purchased, and we said we need to figure out a way how we can skip trace LLCs. So not only would we pull the list of motivated property owners, and that would be based on, again, how long they've owned this property, how many properties do they actually own, are they in state or out of state owners. There's 23 different types of motivations. My team, like I said, if you guys would like to go ahead and get your market analysis and maybe even list pool, you know what, man, I'm going to go ahead and say my team can even help you pull the list. You guys can analyze the market. We can help you pull the motivated sellers list, and then you can go ahead and skip trace that list. Now, again, most of those numbers are going to be inside of an LLCs. We can skip trace LLCs right now. We finally figured that out about 6 months ago. So now we can even get the phone numbers of the LLC owners. So don't just be in the box and say, hey, this doesn't work because I haven't figured it out. Go out there and speak to guys like John. Reach out to me guys on IG, and I'll connect you with my team, and we can show you how we can pull this list for you to start cold calling on. Now, the conversation that we're going to have with these property owners are going to be completely different, and we can talk about that if you would like. But it is definitely more than possible, and we have a lot of clients that work with. Particularly one, I think I told you before I started recording, I had a meeting yesterday with an investor who only purchases apartment buildings in LA County. And we have been able to help him pull motivated sellers lists in that specific county. And that's what we're doing for him.
I love it. Anton, one thing that jumps out to me is, again, I know at least a couple of years ago, even I think as recently as a year ago, when I talked to folks in this space, one of the challenges was, like you said, you would get a lot of LLCs for commercial real estate for apartment buildings. So it's a little bit harder to pull the skip tracing information, the contact info. And certainly, you can do it, but it just takes a lot of more work, a little bit more effort to track that down. And certainly is more challenging. Sounds like you've cracked the code on that and having, included that as part of your process moving forward. The other thing you talked about was recognizing motivation. You have identified 23 motivating factors from how long they've owned the property, whether or not they're in state or out of state, and other factors there, which I think is really helpful. And you've given a great offer to our listeners. Sorry. You've given a great offer to our listeners to contact you. So make sure you follow Anton on social media, on Instagram in particular. We'll make sure we link to that in our show notes. You can connect with him and he can help you get kind of a market analysis for the market you want to invest in. You didn't start to mention to how we talk to these commercial owners is a little different than how you talk to the residential owners. Can you highlight maybe just a few key points of differentiation of how you would talk to a commercial real estate investor, maybe some of the pain points that they face and what you would say to them or avoid saying to them in comparison to how you might approach a homeowner?
Absolutely. That's a great question. We have different scripts that we use. And to your listeners, if they're interested in doing this on their own, if they contact me on IG, I love to give everything away that we have. REI is an open book. I don't want to keep anything that's like secret. There's no secrets, guys. It's all work and it's all numbers. The more calls you make, the more conversations you have, the more deals you're going to make. That's simple truth. There's no magic formula or pill here. And what we did is we just put it all together to help you make more of those calls. But we do have different types of scripts that we use, whether it's a realtor script, whether it's a wholesaling script, whether it's a commercial property script. And of course, they all are trained on differently. They're coached on differently. There's a specific terminology that you have to use when you're talking to commercial property owners. You cannot just jump in there and say, hey, we're looking to buy a property for cash, talk about the condition of it. That's something that you would use on a wholesaling script. On a commercial type of property script, you would have a much more focused rapport building type of conversation. Hey, John, my name is Anton. I work with ABC Corp. We buy properties like yours, the address. And we understand this is an apartment building. We understand this is a trailer home park. We understand this is a storage facility. And we would like to go ahead and talk to you about our interest of purchasing it from you. Is this something that you are open to? And of course, so having that much more confident introduction, and like I said, I can share the script with you. And of course, you have to know the terminologies of commercial property owners. I mean, your listeners know all this, but the T12s, the rent rolls, the way to ask them, when to ask them specifically, because those are very sensitive type of questions that you must know when to ask. But it's a lot more building rapport, understanding the customers, whether there's even a need for them to sell it. Before we go into the whole, let's talk about the numbers, let's figure out about your situation, whether or not you're looking to sell. You have been owning this property for the last 27 years. We understand that you are an out-of-state owner. How is the management side going for you? Are you at full capacity? What are your capacity rates? Have you tried to increase them? Et cetera, et cetera. It really focuses more on value add here, or how we can come in and add value by most of the time by fixing the property up and getting the right property management company in place so that you can, at the end of the day, buy it at the cap rates are super important whenever you start talking about the offers. The cold caller must understand what's a cap rate and what cap rate are you willing to sell the property for. This is not a cash offer. So because the NOI of the thing. So again, there's so much terminology involved that we take those conversations very differently compared to, for example, a single family, a homeowner, when we just like literally go into the fact of, hey, are you looking to sell? Why are you looking to sell this property? Like the motivation, and then talk about the price. So terminology, training, coaching, following the script, controlling the conversation, making sure that they're even interested, qualifying them in the first place without continuing the conversation. I think those are all super, super important factors. And if your listeners are interested, we can send them the script that we use for commercial property owners with all that terminology in place. If they want to go ahead and make a couple calls themselves, highly encourage it. because it definitely shows you what these cold callers go through on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of the times, John, the commercial property owners are not going to tell you yes on the first call. It's a much more it's a much longer sell cycle for them in terms of, hey, let me go ahead and let's schedule a meeting to talk about this next Tuesday at 10 a.m. And then we have another side of REI Call Center that we haven't mentioned is we do have follow-up specialists and closers that then jump in and start and continue this conversation forward. So the cold caller must be trained, the acquisition closer must be trained specifically to use the right script, but it's follow-up, 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 follow-up. Right? They might tell you, no, we're not interested today. We would call them back, say, hey, John, this is Anton again. I know we spoke about it about a month ago, but has anything changed? So it's I would say it's completely different from single family home properties, and the clients that do commercial stay with us for a much longer time because they understand the cycle that they have to go through. And at the end of the day, our goal is to schedule an in-person appointment for you as our client instead of just trying to negotiate the deal. Our goal is to get the information that we need in terms of, again, the T12, the rent rolls, the cap that they want to go ahead and sell it at, the basics. And then we want to go ahead and schedule the appointment where my partner, John, is going to come out and meet with you in person based on the information that you have provided, talk to you about the offer, and go from there. And that's how we have been able to get through to these owners. But it's definitely a lot more rapport building in the very beginning.
Yeah, Tom, makes a lot of sense. And I think too, one of the things that's awesome is, with commercial real estate owners, certainly there's some emotions involved, but I would say generally speaking, it's an investment for most of them. So it's not like this is my father's home, and I can't sell it. It's just, hey man, I bought this thing. I made my money. If you can hit my number or hit my goal, sure, I'm open to sell. So I've found that people are at least open to learning about an offer. They may be very cold and direct and matter of fact with it, but it does take more relationship building. And I think it's great if you can use a mechanism to open up the doors. Otherwise, you're just competing with every other investor on the open market. So definitely a great way to kind of get a leg up, especially if you have a core market you're focused on. Maybe makes sense to take Anton up on his offer. So connect with him on Instagram. His handle is Anton Zherelyev. Make sure you send him that direct message and he's happy to help you out there. Again, connect with him on Instagram. We'll make sure we link to that in our show notes. Anton, right now we're going to transition and go to our round of insights. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Let's go back to that $100,000 deal that I was famed. That's what really brought me. I don't want to say my claim to fame. It was more my realization about how this game could work. When I got that deal under contract, I was going to make $5,000 assignment fee. It was an hour and a half north of Miami in this town called Port St. Lucie. So it's more like 2-hour drive. And long story short, I was going to go ahead and make it was going to be an assignment deal. There was a cold call that I made myself, and I followed up on this guy, and finally got it under contract, started to market that property and got a couple offers, and was going to make, like I said, $5,000 on it. And then I was sitting at lunch with my girlfriend at the time. Now she is my fiance. We're expecting a baby boy in March, so that's a huge win for me. But we were just sitting at lunch, and she was like, "Why don't we go ahead and why don't we try to flip this thing?" Right, John? I have no experience in working on properties. I cannot even nail a freaking nail, and I'm so bad with tools that I was like, "What are you even talking about? We've never done a flip. This is ridiculous. I don't think that you should. We should even consider it, because at first it's 2 hours away. We've never done a flip. Contractors dealing with the whole thing is going to be just out of this world." And long story short, she convinced me to go ahead and give it a shot. And the person that I am, I always try to do things first before I delegate it to somebody else, because I think it's important. That's why I even encourage the listeners to make a couple of cold calls themselves, so that they can understand the type of conversations and how long it takes, and the lack of return of your time spent of making these phone calls rather than delegating to a cold caller. But going back to this thing, John, I remember for about a month and a half, I would go to this property pretty much daily after work, 5 p.m. drive, get there at 7. From 7 to 10, I would work on that property with a couple of people, with contractors. I would be there trying to do work myself, paint, rip up drywall, like until midnight, come home, go to work the next day, do the same thing over and over and over again. For about a month and a half, I was hating myself for even considering this and doing it. And I'm like, what is this even for? Why would you? It was not the best feeling. But I remember once we finished and once we sold and once I saw that $100,000 check that came in, literally check that they gave me at closing, it changed my whole perception of this game, of this world of real estate. There's so many options out there. Now, would I do it again? No. Like, no, don't. Even though I could probably do that once every few months, I just wouldn't. It wasn't my thing. My thing is growing companies, motivating people, putting the right systems together to help people grow. Like that's me. That's where I excel. That's my strength. Flips, property owners, I don't excel. And since then, I've just been really just buying properties off market, having contractors go in. It gave me a good knowledge of things, right? So now nobody can screw me over and say, hey, this is going to cost X, when I know that that's not the case. So I would encourage your listeners to my mentor always says to me, now I hired another business mentor. His name is Dan Martell. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. Phenomenal individual, but do something every day that scares the living shit out of you. And he always talks about that. Like, do something every day that scares the living shit out of you. And I'm like, in the beginning, I was like, what is he even talking about? But now I realize that you excel when you get out of that comfort zone of knowing everything, right? And even though now that I look back at it, I didn't think that driving for dollars was all that big thing, skip tracing for the big thing, but I had no clue what I was doing. But I figured it out as I went. And same thing happened with this flip. And I remember, John, I hated every single minute of it. I still get like this weird feeling in my stomach when I think about going out there and driving for those 2 hours, coming back 2 hours. I was ridiculously tired. And but now I look at it and say, what, that really changed my whole life. So I hope that helps somebody listening.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
Absolutely. One of the best resources here. Again, I'm going to go ahead and give this out. So for pulling lists, you definitely want to go ahead and use PropStream, Batch Leads, and PropWire. They all have the benefits and drawbacks. I would probably use all three. For a CRM, huge shout out to my guys at Go High Level. If you ever heard of that system, if not, check them out. They're a very, very, very customizable CRM, especially if you're in real estate, to help make you calls. They have a dialer that you can integrate into it. So Go High Level is what I would use as a CRM. For the dialer, if you are looking to go ahead and start making these calls yourself, the dialer that we use is too expensive. I would not even recommend that for you. It's actually, it looks so archaic. It's the best dialer, but it's so difficult to use that I would not recommend you using that dialer, especially in the beginning. It's great on scale, but whenever you're starting, I definitely don't recommend you to use that. But the dialer that I would recommend is the Mojo dialer for you to start making those calls. And for skip tracing, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go ahead and get a plug in there. But at the end of the day, guys, we invested a lot of money into the skip tracing company that I'm talking about, skipbetter.com, because how valuable your data is. Do not cheap out on data. There's so many providers out there that would tell you, oh, you can go ahead and get your data skipped at 2 cents, 3 cents, 5 cents per record. Don't cheap out on your data. It's like putting cheap gasoline into your Ferrari. You can do it. It's probably going to run, but it's going to definitely screw up your entire. In the long term, it's not going to be a good thing. So skipbetter.com is what I would use for skip tracing. Pick up the phone, start dialing yourself, guys. If there's a need for us to help you, reach out. Would love to, like I said, share the scripts, share the contracts, share the market analysis, just to jump on a call and have 15-20 minutes with my data team so you guys can analyze the market. It's I'm a very much believer of a Gary V type of model. Give everything away for free, and the rest will follow you. So yeah, those are the resources that I would recommend.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
3 books, if you don't mind. Buy Back Your Time, which is why I hired Dan Martell to help me scale my business and scale my life. So it's by Dan Martell. It's a great book. If you guys don't follow him, you should on IG. He's a phenomenal value resource in terms of running a business. So Buy Back Your Time. Go for No. If you're in anything in terms of sales related, guys, this is such a short book. It's, I think, 90 pages long, John. I don't know if you ever read it, but Go for No. Phenomenal book. And it's like a fable about why you should make rejection as just part of your life. You shouldn't be disappointed with rejection. You should actually go towards it and accept it, because every single no will lead you closer to a yes. And then finally, for business owners, a book that I recently just read that I highly recommend for any business owner. If you don't have any sort of finance background, you need to know your numbers. And there's a great book called Simple Numbers that just dumbs it down to you as you would a 5-year-old kid in terms of the most important numbers that you should keep attention to and track of in your business to make sure that you are always playing on the right level. So Go for No, Buy Back Your Time, and Simple Numbers.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Love that question. And without a doubt, cold plunging. And I know it's a fad that's going around, but John, I've been doing this for the last year, I think maybe even a year and a half now. I have a gym that I go to, and I cold plunge before my workouts. And the important reasons why you want to do it before your workout is not only because of the benefit of it's better for your body and your growth, your muscle growth. Forget all that. For me, it's the discipline of waking up every morning, getting to my ass to the gym, and jumping into that 46-degree water, because I know that if I do this is probably one of the hardest things I'm going to do today, and just sitting in there for 3 to 5 minutes, getting out, enjoying my workout. But definitely the cold plunging side of things, my health, my mental ability, and just alertness, everything.
Give me your number one insight for cold calling.
Number one insight for cold calling is numbers, man. It's all about how many calls can you make on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, how many conversations you can have. But the biggest insight is just the numbers. Like Jim Rohn says, when skills lack, numbers would work up the lack, or something of that nature. Jim Rohn has a quote about how if you lack a skill, if you put in the work, you will succeed eventually. So numbers, man.
All right, let's go in a different direction. You are in Miami. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh, that's a great one. There's a place in Cayocho. If you are in Miami, it's a hole in the wall that nobody talks about. And the place is called El Sandwich. It's not a sandwicherie. There's a sandwicherie place, but it's called El Sandwich. It's a hole in the wall on Cayocho. The best Cuban sandwich. I'm not a fan of Cuban sandwiches, but this place does it right, man. I'm blown away. So El Sandwich on Cayocho in Miami, Florida. You gotta go check it out. Hole in the wall. Don't expect anything fancy, but phenomenal.
Sounds like a great option. Anton, you gave us a lot of great feedback. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit more about your journey, going from driving for dollars yourself, calling those owners, having to skip trace and realizing, man, I'm putting a lot of work here. There's got to be a better way to scale this thing. Ultimately, you getting cold callers, training them up, and recognizing other people needed the same help. Ended up launching REI Call Center to help other people to get the same benefits, recognizing there's a gap between just hiring a cold caller, but actually managing them, training them, giving them the resources, the proper data, and buying that skip tracing company yourself so that you had access to the best data around. I also appreciate you really being willing to help out our listeners and providing some of the resources available. So again, take Anton up on that. You go to Instagram, his handle is Anton Zherelyev. We'll make sure we link to that in the show notes. Anton, thanks again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.